They needed an army to break what the universe had handpicked, and still they failed. Now imagine this for a moment. Chosen One, a town that could barely agree on what to eat for lunch, suddenly finds perfect harmony, but only when the target is you. They didn't unite for justice, not for peace, not even for their own future. No, they came together like cowards do, bonded by fear, fueled by envy, and desperate to watch you fall. What they didn't realize was, when the entire town turns its back on one soul, that soul becomes unstoppable. Because now they're not just fighting you, they're fighting every force the universe put behind you. It's funny, isn't it? So many of them, so few of you. Yet, somehow, they're the ones crumbling. That's not a coincidence, it's a cosmic law. See, energy doesn't lie. And when a whole damn town directs their hate at one person and still loses, that's not just failure. That's proof of who you are. Chosen One, there's a psychological term called collective narcissism. It's when a group needs to believe they're better than everyone else. But when one person in their midst refuses to play small, refuses to shrink just to make them feel tall, that group panics. They don't see you as a person anymore. They see you as a threat to their illusion. So they try to erase you, cancel you, destroy you. But what happens when the nobody they tried to bury starts growing roots through concrete? That's what you did. And thank you, Chosen One. Don't forget to pay this message forward by simply pressing the like and subscribe buttons to help spread this truth to more souls. It's the responsibility of all of us to shine the light in dark places. And thank you once again for being part of this mission. You're not just a survivor. You are part of a force. Now, let's talk about how it all began. They didn't just plot your downfall in secret. They celebrated it. They toasted behind closed doors, shared smirks in hallways, passed rumors like candy. Some of them even felt noble doing it, like taking you down was some righteous cause. But what they didn't know was this. They were building their own collapse, one lie at a time. They underestimated you, not because you were weak, but because you were silent, because you didn't explain yourself, because you didn't clap back at every insult. That silence, it terrified them. It made them talk louder, scheme harder, and dig their own graves deeper. You were never the villain. You were just the mirror, reflecting everything they couldn't stand about themselves. The universe doesn't pick the loudest. It doesn't pick the most connected, the most popular, or the most praised. It picks the real, the resilient, the ones who carry truth even when it costs them everything. That's why it chose you. Your enemies thought they were organized. They thought numbers equaled power. But power without purpose is just noise. And they were loud. So loud they didn't hear the sound of their own empire cracking beneath their feet. One by one, their alliances started to rot. Friends turned on each other. Lies started to contradict. And that same community that tried to exile you, it's now eating itself alive. They still don't get it. They thought this was about you. They thought you were the target, but you were the test. The moment the universe placed a chosen one in their midst, it was watching how they'd respond. And guess what? They failed the test miserably. You see, when they tried to bury you, they didn't realize you were a seed. Now you're growing, stronger, wiser, unshakable, and they can't stand the fact that after everything, after the sabotage, the lies, the isolation, the betrayal, you're still standing. More than that, you're rising. They had numbers. You had purpose. They had gossip. You had truth. They had control. You had alignment. And no matter how hard they tried, none of them, not one of them, could stop the course of what was already written by the hands of the universe. They failed, Chosen One. Not because they weren't strong enough, but because you were never theirs to defeat. So, Chosen One, are you really ready to see just how deep this betrayal went and how powerful you've truly become because of it? If that whole damn town couldn't break you at your lowest, imagine what happens when you rise. Drop the number 777 in the comments if you're done playing small and finally claiming what's always been yours. And if this message lights something inside you, consider fueling the mission behind it. Whether it's $1 or a kind word, every bit of support helps us push this truth to more souls like you. This isn't just content, it's a movement, and you're a part of it now. And now, let's dive into it step by step. Stay with me. If you've really lived through this, if they truly tried to take you out and failed, you'll feel it in your bones. You'll feel the pull to stay till the end. Let's begin. Number 1. They played dirty, but they forgot. Clean hands, swing harder. You came at me with lies, schemes, and numbers. I came at you with truth, and truth doesn't flinch. Chosen One, here's what really rattled them. Not your strength, not your intelligence, not even your resilience. It was your pure heart. That one thing they could never fake, never copy, never kill. They ran campaigns of slander, whispered in corners, recruited people like pawns on a chessboard, all thinking they could corrupt or crush the one thing that gave you your edge. But your heart? It stayed untouchable, unshaken, and in a world full of masks, that kind of purity is dangerous, terrifying even. Imagine this. A town drunk on its own lies, circling around one soul who refused to bend. They brought their pitchforks and their polished fake smiles, their fake concern and hollow warnings, hoping to make you doubt yourself. But you were the quiet storm they didn't see coming. You watched, listened, endured. You walked through their fire with bare feet and still came out cleaner than they ever were. Because you weren't fighting for revenge. You were standing in truth. And truth, no matter how much they try to bury it, always grows roots. They mocked you, thought your silence was weakness. They giggled behind screens, smirked during conversations, convinced themselves you'd break any day now. They called you too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. But what they didn't understand is that your sensitivity is your radar. Your emotion is your compass. Your intensity, that's your power source. While they were busy calculating how to trap you, you were being forged, cut down to the bone. Yes, but also rebuilt in ways that made you indestructible. They thought they had you outnumbered. They thought a whole town against one soul meant checkmate. But here's the thing about people like you. Your strength multiplies in silence. They had the crowd, but you had the current of the universe. They had each other's lies to cling to. You had your clarity. That's why it didn't matter how many of them stood against you. In the end, the storm always clears, and when it does, only the real ones are still standing. Let's get brutal about this, because this isn't a fairy tale. This is war, psychological war, and they hit you with everything: gaslighting, character assassination, isolation. They rewrote history right in front of your face and told you to smile while they did it. They turned family into strangers and strangers into spies. And yet, even with all that effort, all that hate, all that desperate planning, they still failed, miserably. Because you, Chosen One, held your line. You felt the wrongness in your bones. You saw the cracks in their stories. You asked questions no one else dared to ask, and that scared the hell out of them. They could manipulate almost anyone, but not you. They could paint any lie, but you refused to swallow it. They brought illusion. You brought instinct. They called it paranoia. You called it pattern recognition. And every time they laughed, the universe took note. Every time they tried to humiliate you, the universe shifted gears. Your heart was your armor, not your weakness. What they couldn't wrap their heads around is this: a pure heart doesn't mean naive. It doesn't mean soft. It means aligned. It means clean hands, clear conscience, and brutal self-awareness. And when someone like you walks through hell with a heart that refuses to rot, that's not innocence. That's invincibility. They should have never made you explain yourself. They should have never pushed you to the edge, because what lives on the edge of isolation is not a broken soul. It's a sharpened one. You've seen behind the curtain now. You know how these people operate, and that knowledge, that's your sword. Let's talk real. There were nights you questioned your own sanity, days you wondered, what if they're right? What if I'm the problem? That's what psychological warfare does. It turns your own mind against you. But here's what makes you terrifying. You didn't stay in that pit. You climbed out of it without anyone's help. You faced the silence. You wrestled your own doubt. And in that private, brutal battle, you chose you over and over again. And let's be honest, they know now. Oh, they know. They can feel your shift. They can sense that you're not the same person they tried to break. You walk differently now. Talk differently. You don't need to shout your truth. They feel it when you enter the room. And that's what burns them the most, because even with all they did, you didn't become bitter. You didn't become like them. You didn't go low. You went deep. And now you rise, quietly, powerfully, untouchably. Your existence now is a reminder. Every time they see you standing tall, every time they hear your name whispered with respect, every time someone else sees your light and recognizes your value, it reminds them that they failed, that everything they did not only didn't stop you, it elevated you. They handed you the blueprint of who not to be, and you built an empire from the rubble they left behind. So let them talk, let them squirm, let them convince themselves you're still the villain, because the truth is that you survived an ambush from an entire town, and didn't just survive, but transformed. You turned exile into evolution. You turned betrayal into blueprint. You turned pain into presence. The war they started has only one ending, and spoiler alert, it doesn't end with you broken. It ends with you becoming undeniable. Ironic, isn't it? All that effort to bury you, and now they can't even look away. Chosen one, they played dirty, but they forgot something crucial. When your heart is clean, your steps are blessed. And every time they tried to curse you, they only sharpened your destiny. Let them regret it. Let them watch you walk into the light they tried to block. And let your life become the loudest answer to the question they should have asked before they ever crossed you. What if we were wrong? Too late now. You're already rising. Number 2. They threw shadows, but you were the mirror that made them see themselves. You tried to curse me with darkness, but all you did was expose your own. Chosen one, they couldn't just slander you, betray you, or isolate you. That wasn't enough for them. No, some of them went even further. When the whispers weren't working, when the sabotage wasn't sticking, they reached for something darker. They turned to forces they barely understood, thinking they could break you from the inside out. But here's the thing they forgot. When you mess with energies beyond your control, you don't get power, you get consequences. And what they tried to throw at you, it came back swinging. Imagine this: a group of desperate souls sitting in dimly lit rooms, burning incense and intentions soaked in envy, repeating mantras not of peace or protection, but of destruction, not realizing that the energy they call upon answers to alignment, not desperation. They cast shadows, but you, chosen one, you were already made of light that doesn't flicker. You didn't just survive their attacks, you reflected them. They tried to hex what was already protected. That's not power, that's stupidity wrapped in incense smoke. They thought they were clever, thought their rituals, curses, or energetic darts would quietly erode you from within. After all, you weren't fighting back. You weren't engaging. From the outside, it looked like you were vulnerable, but inside, you were fortified. Not by superstition, not by revenge, but by the pure alignment of heart and purpose. While they played with shadows, you walked in your truth. And truth is the one vibration that darkness can never touch. Let's go deeper. They projected pain onto you with such intensity, night after night. It was almost theatrical, like a ritual of bitterness. But they couldn't know that pure energy doesn't absorb malice. It transforms it. And when that kind of hate hits a heart that hasn't been poisoned, it rebounds, tenfold, hundredfold. It doesn't just dissolve, it returns to sender, wrapped in every ounce of toxicity they poured into it. Imagine them now, jumpy, sleepless, feeling watched, even in empty rooms, starting to sense that something isn't quite right. The paranoia didn't come from guilt alone, it came from the very energies they summoned to hurt you. And when those energies realized they had no foothold in your life, they turned back to the source. They always do. You can't aim fire at someone covered in spiritual rain and not expect to burn your own house down. They didn't just play with fire, they spit it at the wind, and now the smoke has found its way back to their lungs. They used to laugh at the idea of energy, called it woo-woo nonsense. But now, they're not laughing. They're looking over their shoulders. They're questioning the shadows in the corners. They're jumping at sounds that have no source. Because when you aim to destroy someone through invisible forces, and those forces turn on you, fear becomes your constant companion. And I know what you're asking, chosen one. Why me? Why did they go so far? Because your light made their darkness feel exposed, because your existence made them question their lies, and instead of choosing to grow, to evolve, to heal, they chose to destroy. You became the canvas onto which they projected everything they hated about themselves. Your peace was too loud, your presence too unshakable, so they tried to break the silence you carried like armor, and the more they failed, the darker they got. Let's get metaphorical for a moment. Imagine trying to punch a wall made of rubber. Every swing bounces back. Every jab stings your own fist. That's what happened here. They thought they were punching through you, when really they were just hitting their own reflection, over and over and over again. They couldn't pierce your spirit, so now they bleed from wounds they carved with their own hands. They underestimated you because you didn't retaliate. You didn't stoop to their level. You didn't dabble in revenge or hatred. And in their minds, that made you weak. But restraint isn't weakness. Silence isn't surrender. In fact, the most dangerous people are the ones who don't fight dirty, because they don't have to. They let the universe handle what petty hands try to sabotage. And that's exactly what happened. While they plotted, you healed. While they cursed, you grew. And while they unraveled in the chaos they summoned, you were building a foundation so solid it made their efforts look laughable. The harder they tried, the more they failed. And every time they sent that spiritual bullet your way, it ricocheted back, louder, stronger, messier. Now they can't sleep. Now they can't trust each other. The paranoia is eating them alive. Some are losing their grip on reality. Others are watching their lives slowly collapse. And deep down, they know. They know. They won't say it out loud, but they feel it. This is what happens when you attack someone who walks in universal alignment. This is what happens when you try to poison what was never drinking from your cup. And you, chosen one, you didn't even flinch. Not because you didn't feel the tension, but because you understood something they never will. Real protection doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. This isn't superstition. It's not fairy dust. It's energy. It's balance. And when the scales tip too far into hatred, the universe will correct it, brutally. What they thought was power was only borrowed darkness. And now the bill has come due. You can't send out poison and pray for flowers. That's not karma, that's common sense. So let them spiral, let them scramble, let them pretend they're just having a rough patch, while every door they try to open slams shut in their face. Let them wonder why their luck turned, why the smiles around them feel hollow, why peace is something they can no longer find, even in silence. The answer is simple. They made war with a force that doesn't lose. The universe was never on their side. And the best part? You didn't have to lift a finger. You just had to exist, with a heart that refused to rot, with a spirit that couldn't be bought, with eyes that saw through illusion. That's all it took. That's all it ever takes. You were the test, chosen one. They failed, spectacularly. And now you walk forward, not just protected, but witnessed. And they're left chasing shadows they summoned on themselves. Number 3, when the puppeteer lost control and became haunted by their own strings. They wanted power over you. Now they can't stop dreaming about the one they couldn't destroy. Chosen one, your ex, the mastermind, the smooth-talking manipulator, the one who thought they had every move mapped out, was supposed to watch you crumble. That was their fantasy. Not just to see you fall, but to be the reason for it. They didn't just want control, they wanted ownership of your story, your peace, your reputation, your identity. But when everything they tried blew up in their face, something inside them snapped. Now they're obsessed, not in love, not even in hate, obsessed. You live rent-free in their mind, not because you begged for it, but because they can't shake the memory of failing to destroy you. You became a symbol of their own limits, the one thing they couldn't bend, the mirror that didn't distort to flatter them, and the more they tried to erase you, the clearer you became. They don't miss you. They miss the version of themselves that could still believe they were in control. Imagine them now, alone in rooms filled with desperation and dollar store mysticism, lighting candles, whispering your name into smoke, carving intentions into wax like it's going to undo the cosmic justice chasing them. They dabbled in mirror magic, not realizing all mirrors reflect truth. And truth is the one thing they've been running from. They thought they were casting spells on you, but what they really did was amplify their own madness. Every ritual they performed wasn't sealing your fate. It was binding them to the very darkness they tried to drag you into. Their energy didn't touch you. It turned on them. Because the universe doesn't honor manipulation. It only echoes intent. You might ask, why would someone go this far? Because your healing is their punishment. Because every time you rise, they're forced to confront what they lost, and more painfully, why they lost it. You didn't play dirty. You didn't engage in their war. You didn't try to ruin them. And that's what really eats them alive, the realization that even their dirtiest tactics couldn't dent your light. So now they're stuck, obsessed, haunted by a past that refuses to stay buried, and the more they try to control it, the more it controls them. Number 4. They looked into the mirror and finally met the monster. They tried to use reflections to destroy you, but all they saw was the truth staring back, and it broke them. Chosen One, here's what they never grasped. Mirrors don't lie. They don't bend for convenience. They don't flatter egos or feed delusion. A mirror will always show what is, not what someone pretends to be. So when your ex, the manipulator, the fraud, the spiritual amateur began playing with mirror rituals to attack you, they didn't cast power. They cast their own reflection, and it terrified them. Imagine it, night after night, lighting candles, whispering your name into a piece of glass, thinking they were sending waves of destruction your way. But instead of shattering your peace, those rituals turned into windows. Windows showing them exactly who they were beneath the lies, the bitterness, the filth, the cruelty. It wasn't magic, it was exposure, and it was brutal. A mirror can't lie, it only echoes the truth. The real curse is seeing yourself clearly when all you ever sold was illusion. They thought they were clever, thought they could bend energy with ego, but that's not how this works. Mirror magic is brutal to those who carry rot inside them. It doesn't project power, it amplifies reality. And their reality was dark, twisted, unforgiving. Every ritual they performed didn't weaken you, it cracked them further. They watched their own face twist in the mirror and didn't recognize it anymore. That's not a spell. That's karma wearing lipstick. And those candles, oh, they thought they were sealing your fate. But fire doesn't follow hatred. Fire purifies. And when lit with malicious intent, it doesn't strike the innocent. It burns the hands of the one who holds the match. While they were trying to burn your name, they were quietly melting their own defenses, torching their own spiritual insulation. Each flame, each whispered curse was one more hole in their already fractured armor. But the unraveling didn't stop there. As they crumbled spiritually, the real world started catching up too. Investigators started digging deep, and what they found wasn't just petty fraud. It was a full-blown operation. Forged signatures, stolen identities, financial trails leading back to stunned victims. This wasn't just a manipulator. This was someone who had made crime a career. Yet when they forged your name, Chosen One, it wasn't for money. It was personal. It was venom. It was a direct strike meant to erase your stability, your credibility, your life. But instead of destroying you, they signed their own downfall. That ink. It wasn't just forged, it was cursed by intention. They tried to write you out of existence. Now they're the ones disappearing. And the best part? All of it's coming back to them, one broken lie at a time. Number 5. They were so obsessed with breaking you, they broke themselves. When hatred becomes obsession, it doesn't just blind, it exposes. Chosen One, let's speak truth, raw and unfiltered. The level of hate it takes to try and systematically erase another person's financial life isn't normal. It isn't petty. It isn't about revenge. That's a sickness. And, in your ex's case, it went far beyond cruelty. It turned into full-blown obsession. You weren't just someone they wanted out of the way. You became the centerpiece of their twisted fantasy, a person they had to defeat, no matter the cost. And that's where their downfall began, because while they were masterfully covering their tracks with other victims, hiding behind fake signatures, ghost accounts, and polished manipulation, when it came to you, their emotions made them reckless. The more they tried to destroy you, the more careless they became. They started leaving fingerprints, digital trails, gaps in their lies. Why? Because it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about you, and obsession always leaves a mess. Hatred turns criminals into amateurs, and obsession turns amateurs into fools. Imagine it, years of fraud, clean on paper, untouchable, invisible, but one personal vendetta, one emotional target, and suddenly they're making rookie mistakes, signing in their own name, logging into accounts they shouldn't, forgetting to delete files. The case against them started unraveling from your thread. They pulled too hard on you, and it snapped the whole web. And just when things were falling apart, they panicked. You were still standing, the walls were closing in, investigators were circling, and public sympathy gone. So what did they do? They played their lowest card, the fake baby trap. Let that sink in. They thought conjuring a pregnancy lie would reel you back in, guilt you into silence, delay the investigation, and win public sympathy. One disgusting lie to serve multiple goals. It was manipulation disguised as innocence, a last-ditch plea wrapped in emotional blackmail. But the universe doesn't let darkness hide forever. No medical records, no proof, no consistency, no logic. Just a lie so desperate, even their closest allies started shifting in their seats. And that's when it all fell apart. People who once cheered them on, who helped, enabled, excused, started walking away. Because when someone uses the idea of a child to manipulate, that's not just toxic, that's inhuman. They didn't just cross the line, they dug a grave with it. In the end, their own obsession exposed them. Their lie turned the tide, and their need to control you destroyed everything they built in secret. Number 6. When family turns into foes, and betrayal wears your last name. The deepest cuts aren't from strangers. They're from the hands that once tucked you in. Chosen one, this was the one betrayal that hit harder than the rest. The discovery that it wasn't just outsiders plotting your downfall, but family, the very people who were supposed to be your foundation, your protection, your last line of safety. That realization doesn't just sting, it breaks something. Because betrayal from strangers is survivable, but betrayal from blood, that changes how you breathe. You didn't just lose trust, you lost home. As the layers of lies peeled back, it became clear. This wasn't just gossip or miscommunication, this was treachery, calculated. Some of them handed over your secrets like currency, your fears, your breakdowns, your moments of weakness. They delivered them like gifts to your enemies, hoping to buy favor, validation, or simply a front-row seat to your collapse. Some of them, adoptive, step, or biological, never accepted you. You were too real, too bright, too different. So when the wolves came knocking, they opened the door. They didn't stab you in the back. They held the blade in plain sight and called it love. And what's worse, some were born from the same bloodline. The ones who should have been your shelter became spies, trading your peace for whispers and social currency, selling your trust to people who never deserved your name in their mouths. That kind of betrayal doesn't just hurt, it shakes identity, makes you question if love was ever real, makes you revisit every memory to see what was fake. You may be asking, how do I recover from this? How do I trust again? Here's the answer. You don't rebuild trust in them. You build truth in yourself. You realize that blood is biology, but loyalty is earned. And in this storm, your soul learned to walk without hand-holding. Their exit? It was brutal, but it cleared the space for real family to rise. Soul family. the ones the universe sends when the ones you were born with fall short. When blood abandons you, the universe adopts you, and that adoption comes with armor. You were never meant to carry their betrayal. You were meant to outgrow it. They lost access to you the moment they picked sides, and now you're not just walking away, you're ascending, alone maybe, but never unguarded, because the universe always replaces what was lost with something unbreakable. Number 7. They mocked what they couldn't see. Now they're haunted by what won't leave. You called on darkness, but I was never standing alone. The universe stood with me, and now it's standing over you. Chosen one. They thought it was just you they were targeting. One person, one heart, one life. But they didn't know what you carry. They didn't know what's behind you. The universe wasn't sleeping while they moved in silence. And the ancestors, those who bled, fought, and rose long before you arrived, heard everything. They watched, they waited. And when your enemies crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, they intervened. This wasn't coincidence. This wasn't paranoia. This was cosmic correction. It started subtly, unsettling dreams, flickers of movement just outside their vision, a cold presence in the room when no windows were open. They shrugged it off at first, laughed it away, called it a bad night, a guilty conscience, maybe even blamed stress. But you knew what it was. The air was changing, and those who mocked your intuition were now trapped in a storm they couldn't name. They didn't believe in consequences until they woke up living inside one. Now imagine them stumbling around their own homes, sleep-deprived and paranoid, doors creaking, phones ringing with no caller, whispers slipping through vents. They mocked what they didn't understand, called you delusional, too sensitive, too spiritual. But now they're believers. Believers in forces they laughed at, trembling in rooms that used to feel safe. Because when you go to war with a chosen one, you're not fighting just them. You're fighting everything that protects them. And the leader of it all, the one whose hands were dirtiest, whose jealousy was loudest, whose need for power blinded them, they're unraveling. Their mind, once sharp in manipulation, is now scattered. The mask they wore so confidently is slipping. They can't manage their emotions. They're losing control of their lies. The same schemes that used to work, backfiring, public image, crumbling, energy, drained. You sent curses toward me, but they returned with interest, and now they're knocking on your door. They're watching everything they built on lies collapse under the weight of invisible hands, and still they don't fully understand. They keep asking, why isn't this working? Because this time they weren't just fighting a person, they were trespassing on sacred ground. You were never alone, chosen one. The universe made sure of that, and now it's making them remember. Number 8. They called it concern, but it was a cover for something far more sinister. They didn't just target you, you were the test. The real monster was hiding behind smiling faces and polished uniforms. Chosen one. The further the investigation reached, the darker the truth became. This wasn't just about one vindictive ex or a few nosy neighbors. No, this was a network, a machine, a hidden structure of manipulation and corruption that ran deeper than anyone was ready to admit. What started with your pain uncovered something much bigger, something rotten, twisted, and deliberate. You were never just a random target. You were chosen, not just by the universe, but by them. Not for praise, but for experimentation. You were the subject of a quiet war, a testing ground for psychological warfare. Isolation, gaslighting, character assassination. It was all by design. Their goal, to see how far they could push one soul before it shattered. But instead of breaking, you exposed them. They didn't expect the experiment to fight back. They didn't expect the target to become the whistleblower. Law enforcement, public servants, authority figures, people who should have upheld justice were neck-deep in betrayal. They didn't just look away, they participated, filing false reports, burying your complaints, laughing behind closed doors while your life burned. The badge didn't protect you, it hunted you. The very symbol meant to offer security was used like a leash, a weapon, a tool of silent warfare. But the rabbit hole didn't stop there. What you uncovered, what investigators are still wrapping their heads around, was the ugliest truth of all. This wasn't just corruption, this was evil. Community organizations that were secretly trafficking children. Social service programs acting as fronts for human exploitation. People in suits, with degrees, with reputations, masking a darkness so vile that even hardened professionals were shaken. They wore masks of concern, but built their empires on silence, pain, and the screams of the invisible. And you, chosen one, you were the breach in their wall. You were the crack that let the light pour in. They thought they could break you quietly, but in trying to destroy one person, they exposed a network that had been untouchable for years. They chose the wrong soul to test. Now the world is watching. Number 9. They tried to bury you, but you became the crack that crushed their empire. They saw you as a crack, but you were the fault line, and when the ground gave way, their whole world came down with it. Chosen one, they never imagined that going after you, the one they thought was powerless, isolated, easy to silence, would be the beginning of their end. They underestimated not only your resilience, but the ripple effect of your truth. What they saw as a minor target turned out to be the weak point in a rotting structure, and when they struck, the entire foundation started to crumble beneath them. You were never just a victim of personal revenge. You were the alarm clock in a system designed to stay asleep. Your ex and their enablers, so blinded by arrogance and ego, thought they could manipulate, discredit, and destroy without consequence. But the moment they moved against you, they triggered something bigger, cosmic exposure. What they tried to hide in the dark was pulled into the light, piece by piece, lie by lie. They pulled one thread, and the entire tapestry unraveled because that thread was connected to truth. The lies started clashing. The false reports contradicted each other. Fabricated complaints began to overlap and fall apart under scrutiny. Patterns emerged, patterns no one could deny, and even some of the more corrupt officials, those who had once looked the other way, began to flinch. Because the mess had become too loud, too public, too dangerous to be ignored. Your ex's family, the ones who eagerly joined the smear campaign, began to split. Some started whispering, "Something doesn't add up." Others clung to the narrative, not because it made sense, but because admitting the truth meant facing their own guilt. That's what happens when people build loyalty on lies. They either wake up or dig deeper into denial. And the so-called secret society, the network of power players who thought they were untouchable, they started turning on each other. Suspicion crept in. The loyalty they once weaponized against you turned inward like a snake eating its tail. They weren't prepared for the truth to come from within, and they certainly weren't ready to face each other when the mask fell. You weren't the crack in their story, you were the mirror, and mirrors don't lie. They thought they were silencing a problem. Instead, they exposed themselves to something far more brutal than human justice, cosmic justice. the kind that doesn't answer to bribes, status, or reputation, the kind that watches mom, waits, then strikes with perfect timing. And once it starts, there's no stopping it. Number 10. They laughed at you until the joke was on them. They called you delusional. Now they're choking on the punchline they helped write. Chosen one, the universe has a wicked sense of timing. For so long, they mocked you. They laughed behind closed doors, rolled their eyes at your warnings, and labeled your pain as paranoia. But when the smoke cleared and the truth clawed its way to the surface, the joke wasn't on you. It was on them, and it hit harder than they ever expected. They thought they were the puppeteers, the secret architects of your downfall. They thought they could surveil you, harass you, slander you, ruin your name, and that no one would notice, that the lies would stay buried, that the system would back them forever. But the universe had other plans, and when it struck, it didn't whisper, it roared. You weren't the fool in their story. You were the reckoning in disguise. The moment everything shifted wasn't loud. It was sudden. The same people who once laughed in unison began to fall silent. Their confidence cracked when those carefully orchestrated lies began exposing themselves through contradictions, paper trails, and undeniable digital footprints. That's the cosmic joke. They thought they were predators. Turns out, they were just writing their own confessions with every action. They didn't just harass a person. They participated in organized psychological warfare, illegal surveillance, coordinated smear campaigns, forged reports, and relentless manipulation, all aimed at someone who had done nothing more than live with a pure heart. They built a machine designed to crush, and instead, it crushed itself. They thought your integrity made you weak, but integrity is armor, and liars can't touch what they can't corrupt. The fire they lit around you was supposed to consume you, but it refined you instead, and while you stood untouched in the blaze, the universe turned the heat onto them. Suddenly, the ones who mocked your spirit couldn't sleep. The ones who dismissed your truth began whispering yours to others. The bullies became believers, and the laughter died. One by one, the exposure began. The forged documents traced, the false police reports flagged, the financial crimes evidenced. These weren't accidents. These were deliberate crimes, stacked high and now crashing down. Even the most corrupt among them couldn't hold the dam back forever. The pressure was too much, and the wave broke. What began as a smear campaign turned into a criminal investigation, and what they hoped would end in your silence ended in their downfall. Because the universe doesn't choose cowards, it chooses warriors. It chooses the ones who can be laughed at, ridiculed, betrayed, and still not fold. You were never the punchline. You were always the plot twist. Number 11. The master manipulator finally drowned in their own game. They built a kingdom of lies and then choked on the throne they stole. Chosen one. After all the whispers, after all the lies, after every underhanded move meant to shatter your spirit, your ex, the master manipulator, finally met what they never thought they would: consequences. Not just whispers behind closed doors, not just tension in a room. Real consequences, legal, public, unavoidable. For years they moved through life untouched. Their manipulation was so refined, so performative, that people mistook it for charm. They didn't just lie, they performed, played roles, gathered support, painted themselves as the victim in stories where they were the villain. But all performances have curtain calls, and this one ended with sirens, subpoenas, and shame. They weren't smarter, just louder. until the truth found its voice. The investigation didn't end with them, because the thing about conspiracies is they're never clean. The deeper the roots, the wider the collapse. Their network, the so-called secret society, the complicit authorities, the neighbors who thought silence made them innocent, were all dragged into the spotlight they never wanted. Suddenly, no one could hide behind influence. The power they once clung to became meaningless when the light hit. And here's the irony, their downfall came from their own arrogance. They documented everything, kept records of their experiments, logs of psychological warfare, digital footprints of manipulation. Why? Because they thought they were untouchable, because they thought it was all justified. That same professionalism is now evidence stacked against them in a courtroom. The hands that once wrote your destruction now sign their own confessions. What they believed was a celebration, what they saw as a coordinated, triumphant destruction of you, was in reality the opening ceremony of their own collapse. They had poured every ounce of their energy into breaking you. So much so that they never stopped to protect themselves. And when the spiritual forces they recklessly invoked came back around, they came back louder, sharper, ruthless. They lit fires they couldn't control. They opened doors they couldn't close. And when the blowback came, it didn't just shake them, it unraveled them. Desperate acts followed. The fake baby trap, erratic outbursts, breakdowns in public and private. It wasn't strategy anymore. It was a soul imploding under the weight of karma. They didn't just lose the battle, they became the warning. And the most brutal twist, every accusation they hurled at you was a mirror, projection so perfect it was almost poetic. They said you were unstable, but they cracked. They said you lied, but every word from their mouth was fiction. They called you dangerous, but they were the storm. Now they stand alone, not as a mastermind, but as a monument to self-destruction. A reminder that when you make someone's ruin your obsession, the only life you truly destroy is your own. And so, chosen one, the storm they sent to destroy you ended up revealing them. What was meant to bury you became the force that unearthed every hidden lie, every dirty secret, every mask. You didn't just survive, you exposed an empire built on deception. This was never your downfall, it was their unraveling. If this message hit home, drop the number 777 in the comments to let the world know you're still standing. Like, subscribe, and share this with another soul who needs to hear it. Let's spread the truth, because light only multiplies when it's shared. You're not alone, you're a force.